Today we'll be looking at Hellpoint. This is a Souls-like sci-fi game with a bit of a horror twist. It's developed by Cradle Games and published by TinyBuild. It was kickstarted a while back. Now let me start by saying I went into this game with as little info as possible, and had I known that this was a Dark Souls clone game by a smaller studio in the Unreal Engine, I probably would have never bothered giving it a look, because most Dark Souls games, especially in the Unity or Unreal Engine, look and play like poop. That's not the case with Hellpoint. It is not poop. In fact, this is one of the best Souls clones I've played. Plays a bit more like Bloodborne, but with better framerate, controls, and RPG character progressions, such as more weapon variety and loot. Now, normally I play a game for 4 hours and I do my first impressions video on it, so I get a grasp on all the mechanics and tell you about them. However, with an RPG especially like this one, it's hard to get a grasp on every mechanic within that time period, so I'll just leave you with what is essentially the first 2 levels and 2 boss fights of what I've played. I haven't gotten far enough to really judge it, and that's fine because the story takes a back seat. What you're really here for is the gameplay, which is fantastic from the little I've played. I've played about 3 hours now. So the game has a meaty feel to its weapons. When you swing a weapon around, you're kind of committed for that attack. So it's really hard to explain without, you playing a Dark Souls game, but all you need to know is that when you hit something with a big axe, you feel like you're swinging a big axe, not some little reed. But here, the movement and control is very fluid and slick. You can roll cancel out of attacks, you get a nice, big, slick roll, so dodging is just a breeze. Hit detection is on point, it's super tight, and the only time it's a bit janky is to your benefit, like when an enemy misses even though it should have been a hit, which, I always like. I'm fine with that. Enemy variety isn't super varied, and they aren't very original, but the enemies are modeled very well, and they are satisfying to fight. Bosses have a variety of attacks and mechanics that are easy to memorize, but still make the fights a joy, even if they can be a bit challenging at first. As you learn their attack patterns, you might die a couple times, but once you get used to it, the boss fights aren't super hard, but they are super fun. The game doesn't just play great, it also looks great. Now, for a lot of these smaller budget, smaller studio games, maybe they've gotten a Kickstarter, whatever, but you can always see the cracks, you can see the limitations for making a fully fledged 3D title, but then you have games like Hellpoint, which kind of shatter that. This game only made, I think, $60,000, I think that was even Canadian, and, the publisher isn't a big publisher, but I'm really impressed with what they've done here. The environments can look stunning in terms of art directions, backgrounds look stunning, the simplistic geometry of the walls and the environments on this derelict station lean itself to this dark yet sanitized, cold look. It really favors it that it's a more simplistic looking game sometimes, and the backgrounds have the little bits of complexity. Now, I feel the game could have some more variety in its environments, and when it comes to level design, when you're going for that Dark Souls route, it should have that spiderweb level design to match. Make the exploration rewarding and interesting, but unfortunately, outside of a shortcut here and there, or an item, the game doesn't really have great exploration from what I've seen. Graphically, it does chug a bit. I didn't have any drops below 60, but I know that the console version is getting blasted by critics right now for poor performance. Apparently, this is getting fixed. I also have a pretty good rig, 1070 Ti, 8700K, so don't expect it to run all that great on a lower-end system. However, that is above 60 at maxed out settings at 1440p, so it's actually pretty decent, all things considered. Graphically, it does look good at some points. It's hard to find one fault in the presentation. Again, it's got that simplistic art style. Some of the gear looks very nice. In general, it's a good effort. Nothing looks super low tier or budget or like some Unity Unreal Engine asset flip like I've seen from a lot of other games. It's a tight, nice looking game. Now, in general, the presentation is pretty good, with the exception of the sound design. Now, I think some sound effects in this game sound really good. The positional audio is really well done here for the most part, and some of the music is very nice. But how all the sounds are mixed is inconsistent. Sometimes you're hearing stuff in the background and you're getting spooked, and it's like you're getting pulled into this dark and oppressive world, and other times you're fighting a boss and there's absolutely no punch to some of its attacks in terms of sound, and the music almost sounds muffled, and when you enter the boss fight, there's like almost no sound at all. It just sounds really off-putting. Now, according to the developer, there are issues with the multiplayer. It's currently being fixed. I couldn't really get it working. I didn't really even try. I also couldn't figure out how to enable split screen on the PC version. I should also mention that I did have to look up a walkthrough to get out of one area. I normally don't do that, but I really wanted to progress, and I was spending about 20 minutes running around like an idiot, so I thought I would mention that. I should also mention that there's some bugs and glitches with this title. There's issues with hitching, there's issues with textures sometimes glitching out, the camera is a bit finicky at times. The footage you're also seeing here during the boss fight, that ran fine for me, but for some reason OBS had an issue capturing it, so this does not look nearly as stuttery as it did when I was playing it. And unfortunately, I need to use it to show you a annoying mechanic that I'll talk about in a second. Now, in addition to the audio mixing being one of my main points of criticism, the other beef I have with this game is the staggering mechanic. Basically, in any Souls game, when you lose enough stamina during an attack or a block, you get staggered, and you're opened up to enemy hits. Now, in Dark Souls, you'll usually get hit once, and then you can recover fairly easily because you have some extra invincibility frames. So you take some damage, okay, you're not going to get hit right away again, usually. But here, not only do you have less of those invincibility frames, so you can be left open to consecutive attacks, but that stun lock, when you first get stun locked and you're just standing there, your character wide open, but it's like 2 or 3 seconds of just being wide open, and some bosses and enemies can absolutely decimate your health. It's really frustrating, especially for the second boss. I had to kind of exploit him by kind of running him around in a circle and then just poking him once, because your stamina recovery is okay, but your total stamina is really, really low at the start, so you have to be so careful and so patient at the beginning. Now, as you level up, this can change depending on what your build is, but it can be a little bit frustrating. But overall, I found the game to be very fun. The graphics are nice to look at for the most part. The atmosphere is great. The RPG character progression is fantastic. I haven't even gotten to guns or some of the other mechanics, like weapon crafting or forging. There's so much here that I haven't uncovered yet, and this is why I wanted to do just a quick video, but it's almost looking like it's going to be 10 minutes, so, I'll just wrap it up here. Give it a look-see. Maybe I'll have a bigger video on it later on if I have time to finish it, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'm out.